You know the Magna culture, right? Nobody works for me. You people work with me. I'm working for you. The history of mankind has always been dominated by the golden rule. Here's the gold makes the rule. But I don't want to be dominated by anyone. If I feel that strong, I should not be able to dominate somebody either.
My name's Iwona and I'm here with legendary Frank Stronach, Canada's most successful entrepreneur. Started off as a one-man operator and created 180,000 jobs worldwide. Frank, we're at a crossroads economically in Canada. Small businesses are having a hard time even going past year one. Medium-sized businesses and large businesses are having a hard time scaling up. Do you think that there's opportunity for Canadians to reach the type of success that you were able to reach when you first came to Canada?
Look, the key is when things don't work in your personal life, or if you have a business and things don't work, or if things don't work in the country, then you should know you got a problem. If you don't know you got a problem, you really got a problem, okay? So we all know things don't work because all the signs are there. The signs are there. An ordinary couple has got no chance to buy a house. Pretty soon they got no chance to buy a car, okay? Whereby 50 years ago, an ordinary couple, let's say, the wife might have been a nurse, the husband a plumber. They could afford to buy a house, okay? Because about 50 years ago, you could get a house for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. A house with, maybe 600 to 800,000, right? Okay. So the signs are there, right? And over and above the signs too. The slogan was, when the first computers came out, the slogan was, if you got one of those computers, you could eliminate a total office floor in a high-riser. Now, when I look in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, or any city in the States, or any city, there's high-risers. What do you think they do in there? They don't make products. You know, they don't make any products. It's regulations. We have so many regulators. We got regulators which regulate regulators.
What do you think is the single biggest obstacle for small businesses to succeed in Canada?
Well, we got to realize that small business was always the backbone of a country. And really, when we take a closer look, the future of Canada is in the hands of small business. And small business might not like the politicians, they might not like a lot of things, but they do love their kids. So for their kids' sake, they gotta think about it. They gotta band together. If they band together, they could bring about change.
You've created a new business association called the New Wave Common Sense Business Association. Is this where you see businesses banding together to call for change? And what do you think is the most important change that this business association can accomplish for small business?
Yes, that's the primary reason, right? Why I created what I would call the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, right? I created that where basically I try to promote or try to tell small business, you gotta band together. In life, to bring about change, you know, timing means everything. Timing is important. What are the signs of timing? The fridges are half empty. Mothers, you can hear mothers talk that they're worried how to feed kids next week. So the timing is there, right? And hopefully, I would have rather say, gee, the fridges are full, we're done, everybody's happy. No, everything's fine, right? But if things are not fine, if you're not aware what goes on around you, if you don't see the hurt in a lot of people and the stress, then there's something wrong with us people. We should do better, right? Okay, life has been great to me, right? I've been blessed with such good health and such a good mind, or at least I think I have a good mind. But I've always said, it doesn't matter how smart you are. If the stars are not aligned, it won't work. So I've been very blessed. And, when we're young, we all hustle a bit to make some money so we can live in dignity and help the family. And I've created over 400 factories in 34 different countries. I could live in 34 different countries in dignity. I chose Canada. It's a great, great, great country. And basically, I tried to ring the alarm bell. Basically, I tried to tell small business, you got to band together. Look, this is a great country. Don't let's forsake it. Okay? I like to see that Canada is the first country in the world with an economic charter of rights. The message I want to get across is the human charters of rights alone is not sufficient. We have to fortify it with an economic charter of rights. Economic charters of rights will lead to economic democracies, and economic democracies are the basis for democracy itself. Let me put the same thing what I just said in a more simple way, grassroots way. The message again is the same. All politicians agree. All business people agree. If the economy doesn't work, nothing else will work. If the economy doesn't work, you cannot feed the hungry. You cannot look after the most fragile people, the elderly, the sick, and the handicapped. Okay, it's the economy, the economy, the economy. The message I want to get across loud and clear is, without workers, you can't make a profit. So workers have a moral right to some of the profits. So basically, I'm preaching not let's take away from the rich. I'm saying we must let workers participate, baking the economic pie. If they participate, everybody gets a bigger slice.
Frank, you believe in capitalism, but you believe capitalism needs some mechanisms to rein it in. What are those mechanisms?
Well, the mechanism would be the economic charter, right? I'm the last one, or I promote we should not destroy the capitalistic system. The capitalistic system needs harnessing when they get large. So basically, I'm saying when I talk about small business, those are businesses below 300 employees. So businesses below 300 employees, I try to tell everybody, let's set them free. Let's set them free like it was 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. And I'm using sometimes an example. When I started my first factory, I rented a small building the size of a 4-car garage. I arrived in 1957. I didn't know anybody. I'm a tool and die maker. I found a job right away. But anyway, from 1957 when I arrived, from 1954, to 1967 when I started my first business, I saved $5,000. In those days, $5,000, you could buy a small home or a small farm. So that doesn't happen anymore. The signs are there. Look, nothing functions, right? Okay, so it's so important, everything. And again, the very key, the most important thing is small business gotta band together. Basically, I want to tell them, look, if you band together, you're huge. You're a huge constituency. The politicians will listen to you because in the final analysis, the decisions are made in Parliament, right? Because we live in a democratic country, and that's why we're going to do everything we can that democratic country stay alive. But they won't stay alive if let's say 60, 70% of the capital is in the hands of a few people. Okay, what we have now, there's better statistics in the States than in Canada. We have now in the United States, about 1% of the people own 50% of all the wealth.
That's
The
daunting.
1% though, 99%. Looking at all the freedom in the world, they're also free to be hungry. So basically, I'm trying to say a kid in an inner city Detroit, freedom doesn't mean anything to him. He knows he's only free to be hungry. We gotta look at an economic chart of rights. And that's why we gotta create it. Let's talk a little more yet about the New Wave Common Sense Business Association.
Well, before we move to the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, I wanted to ask you, Frank, you've been ringing the alarm for 20, 30 years. And we're at a point right now in Canada where things are really dire. As you said, the fridges are half empty. Why do you think people are still apathetic? Why do you think people are not banding together and speaking up and speaking out against the decisions made in Parliament?
Because there's no role model, there's no example, right? We've done it like that forever and ever, right? We don't teach in the schools, right? Or in universities how important economic charters would be, right? So our school system needs badly changing, right? And we always thought, yes, society came a long way from the caveman to the hunted, to the kings and to the servants, and now we have bosses and unhappy employees. Yes, we need a new wave. Employees gotta be partners. Every day when I built Magna, and like you said, I built a company with 180,000 employees. Every day I went to work, I always asked myself, what do I have to do that workers respect me? I created the most advanced human resource department structures, because if people are not happy, there's no business can function. So business gotta need the right human resource structures. When you take a look at Magna, right, which I created, with 180,000, when I stepped out, there was 180,000 employees. 1/3 of them were women. We had more than 60,000 women employed. Okay, so I was thinking over and over, what do I have to do that every employee coming to work, man or woman, would love to come to work. Nobody really. Maybe it's okay to go to work, right? Providing you're not hostile, providing you're respected, providing it's fair, the wages, etc., right? Okay. And naturally, and you gotta reasonable like it, right? You gotta realize if you want to accumulate some monies, you gotta do some work. But if you gotta go in, the environment should be reasonable. So I've created the most advanced environment that employees could call hotlines, and that we had very advanced investigators which looked at the complaints, right? Because the key is to keep employees happy. So that's a very important aspect. That's the way Magna grew, right? But we have now a serious problem, very serious, right? And look, and the science again, when you see call it buildings going up within the last 20, 30, 40 years. Years ago, 50, 60 years ago, those were factories. Now when you see building going up, those are only warehouses. We became a nation of warehouse operators. That's very serious, right? We gotta ring the alarm clock left and right. I'm pleading with small business. Think about it. Think about your kids. Okay? We gotta band together. Okay? And we gotta be disciplined, right? We gotta reduce We got to reduce the bureaucracy, but it's got to be done in a civilized way. They are not, yes, we're all to blame for a certain extent that things don't work, but we can only change it in a civilized way. We won't be able to change it if we use a chainsaw, right? So, but we gotta reduce the bureaucracy, okay? We could do maybe 60% of the bureaucracy could be reduced in a very civilized way. For instance, I would recommend they get a wage settlement spread over 5 years. They get 10% less every year. But supposing a bureaucrat would find a work in the private sector, because if we're the private sector, would absorb a lot because we do need regulations. And I said earlier on, we need workplace safety, there's regulations, we need environmental regulations and ethics, right? But let small business, they can take care of themselves, right? They've always did.
How do you see us reversing that? How do you see small business taking back control, being able to self-regulate themselves with our bureaucracy being so large and so seated in our economy?
Yes, to take it back, that's what we got to try. That's so crucial. That's so. And keep in mind, that system slowly, let's say about 80, 100 years ago, great democratic country, small business were the driving forces, everybody did quite well. But it didn't get worse overnight. There was a slow buildup of bureaucracy.
Do you think you can still consider Canada a democracy?
Well, the very key is in life you must have hope. Mm-hmm. Okay, you need intangible hopes, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, just as an example, right? We, at one time it was the largest city lantana in America, because I bought practically most of the horse race tracks, mm-hmm. And so I owned the horse race tracks in Baltimore, right? And when I bought it, I looked around. I said, "Oh my God." On the backside of the racetrack, there was a neighborhood like Iwona. It looked like some of the slums in India, right? Mm-hmm. It looked better then. So I went to some of our security guards. They were black, and I said, "Look, I want to meet the black neighborhood leaders." And so we went back in a thing here, and I saw a rundown deserted high school. I said to the leaders, "Look, if you want to, and with your help, we can build that rundown deserted high school into the most modern technical trade school." They were skeptical. But 2 years later, when the school got in operation, some had tears in their eyes. I gave tangible hopes, mm-hmm. not a lot of words like politics, which there's no meaning. The words have to have a meaning, okay? So when we say small business gotta band together, they have a great voice, because no politician would dare to say we gotta reduce the bureaucracy, because they get elected because they have so many.
Yes, yes.
So nobody, right?
Canadians.
So look, and I know them all, right? Yeah. They basically, when you meet them on an individual level, they are great, but they're trapped in the system. That system grew over the last 70 years. Mm-hmm. So we got to dismantle the system in a very civilized way.
And you see small business,
you cannot leave the politician alone when it comes down to the economy. The economic charter puts a discipline on the politician to say they must have a balanced budget.
It keeps them accountable.
They cannot print monies forever and ever. It doesn't work that way. Call it the mortgage for our future generation gets higher and higher. Okay,
Yes.
or deep and deep in the hole,
Yes.
right? So, and then they cannot. The discipline is they cannot totally tape small business in their tape. Right, it's gotta. So the politicians gotta be honest, right? They gotta be small business. Good has the force. So if they band together, they could do it. So it could be done in a democratic way.
How do you think small business can accomplish that if they band together and they support the economic charter, they endorse the economic charter? How can they use that leverage, or how do they leverage the CEC to accomplish what the New Wave Common Sense Business Association promises to do, which is get rid of the business tax for small business under 300 employees, bring in profit sharing, and give our business owners an opportunity to be business leaders in this country?
If they band together, right? There's about 1 million small businesses. Imagine their family, and I still think there is a lot of good Canadians which worry in what direction we go, right? So if small, they call it the New Wave Common Sense Business Association, they would have, as I said early on, the timing has to be right? Or call it the pain factor, and you need the constituency. You have a political force. Because politicians listen to it. Imagine if there's a force with 1 million votes. The politician everyone will guarantee, yes, we need an economic charter of rights. Okay, but now it's the other way, because it's unfortunately we gotta reduce the bureaucrats, and I want to tell the bureaucrats, look, it's not you're not totally to blame. Yes, you got to bring some blame. The politician gotta pay some blame, and so the public, right? But the only way we get out of it is by doing it in a civilized way, and thereby they must band together, and they must say to the politicians, look, we want the economic charter of rights. We want the economic charter of rights, got to be part of the Constitution. Because the economic charter of rights got nothing to do with politics. No. It only gets the country back on a solid economic foundation, and no business can function unless they are on a solid economic foundation, and no country can function unless the country is the foundation is a solidly in economics.
What do you say to businesses who have given up on Canada? We lose hundreds of thousands of small business owners and Canadian citizens to the US and other parts of the world because they don't see a future in this country. What do you say to the small businesses who are debating leaving the country for greater opportunity in other parts of the world?
Well, it's. I think there has to be the right program, so there's real hope, right? Because right now it's the same thing. Like I know many politicians, many were on our board. Brian Mulroney was on our board. Bill Davis, Mike Harris, many liberals, many. So I know they're basically good people, right? Mean well for the country, but they got trapped within the system, right? I mean, about 70, 80 years ago, politicians could quickly bring about change, right? Economically, and they did it, right? But slowly, the bureaucracy set in, whereby not moved anymore. So we gotta create the constituency, the new wave, because the Chamber of Commerce didn't ring the alarm bell. The Independent Business Council didn't ring, and so we need. The new wave, I think we could get a huge building block because it would free them up, huh? Okay, they would get free. Why an economic charter of rights? We could eliminate poverty in Canada. And, having lived, sometimes I'm thinking more than a Canadian, a native born, because I've seen so many countries. I think this is such a great country. We cannot lose it. We got it. There's no place. I want to see Canada being the first country in the world with an economic charter of rights. So it's so important. So they look, if we free them, right? It's like if your business practice has no regulators and you pay no business tax, okay? Because the entrepreneurs only take out so much so that the family can live upon. But they want to grow, right? So we got to give them the chance to grow, because if small business does well, the whole country too does well. But right now,
What do you mean? If small business does well, the country does well? Because a lot of people think, the business owner, the successful business owner making all these millions and, they're working 9-to-5 jobs, and people don't see the value necessarily in businesses succeeding and entrepreneurs succeeding.
Of course, if small business works together, then our tax system, right, will be treated like everybody. There'll be no more loopholes. If you make more money, you pay more taxes, right? But right now, you have thousands and thousands of tax lawyers which just look for loopholes, like to satisfy special interest, financial interest groups, right? So if small business, they would all play on the same level playing field. Okay.
And they would hire more employees.
So, and they would hire employees, and they'd be free to produce products. They would walk to a department store and say, look, that's all made in China, here and here. We could make that ourselves in Canada.
Do you think we can compete with China at this point?
Yeah, of course you can compete if in the final analysis, look, let me get an example, right? When I put in an economic charter of rights at Magna, right, in the late 70s, early 80s, right, where it says the most important principle in our economic charter was how do we allocate the profits, right? So 20% of the profits at Magna went to the shareholders. 10% of the profits went to the employees over and above the wages. 6% of the profits went to management. 7% of the profits went to research, because research is the foundation for the future. And 2% went to charity. When I put in that economic charter, the profit sharing, our profits went up 40% the first year, 100% the second year, and 200% the third years. When you let workers participate in a tangible way in profit sharing, you release an energy of under proportions, right? Because the workers on the front line, they can see things. How can we make things better, right? So that's why, that's why we could, I think we could compete in thing here.
We unleash innovation via profit sharing.
China does not. They have special programs that say, look, we want to make the thing, and we subsidize the thing. That cannot be done, right? So we got to be aware of it. That's a no-no, right? Okay, you cannot. It got to be done on business ethics.
We've lost a lot of our manufacturing capabilities, and we're losing more and more. How do we turn the clock back with that?
Well, we need trade schools, very important, right? Without trade, look, a farmer cannot produce food unless he got seeds. A country cannot produce products unless they got skilled labor. And we let skilled labor totally go, right? So we must. That should be the top priority to create skilled labor schools throughout the country, right? We gotta get to make things. And that combined, that what could be profit sharing programs, we could be competitive again. And we could have with the economic charter of rights, we would have the highest living standards in the world. And let me say one more thing, because I know Canadians. 60% of the Canadians get up in the morning and work hard.
Yes.
They want to accumulate some monies to help themselves and their families, right? Okay? So the 60% or 2/3 would become economically free, because basically you're not a free person unless you be economically free. So what does that really mean? Sometimes when you make statements, you gotta back it up with something. So basically I'm saying, if a Canadian woman or a Canadian man worked for 30 years, they should have enough accumulated to own their own house, own condo, might be a small one, but mortgage free. In addition, they should have at least $300,000 in a bank so they could subsidize their old age pension and help their grandchildren or their children. And they can choose their own road to happiness, for their remaining years. That's what economic freedom would mean, or should be. How many do you know which would fall under that category? No mortgage on their house and $300,000 cash, right? Yeah. But should easily be obtained. The very important thing to know, what happened to the 1/3. And sometimes we shouldn't have come to a quick conclusion and say to some, look at that lazy bum. Because people might have been unfortunate enough. As a kid, you could fall down the tree. There's so many. Eat the wrong tree, pick up a sickness, pick up an insurance. But if Canada, if 2/3 would be economically free, they'd be so rich. A school system would function better, or a medical system would function better. We would most likely, eat organic food, so we could reduce, maybe down to 5%, which really, let's say, have had injuries or been, for one reason or the other, that nature neglected them for one reason or that they could not keep quite up. But Canada would be such a rich country, and the 2/3 will help the other peoples to, and hopefully down the road, besides eliminating poverty, maybe 90% would be economically free. That's the goal.
That would be an incredible.
And that we could achieve. Small business got to band together. You have such a political power. You got to tell politicians you can't do that. You cannot. You got no business in our business. Okay.
The government has no business in small business.
Government has no business to be at small business, right? Government do regulate the large companies, etc., right? But not the small companies. And so no business tax, no regulators, and the right tax systems.
So to turn this country around, we want to see small businesses join the New Wave Common Sense Business Association. They got
to join that, and they got to, it's got to be grassroots, right? If it be, tell your friends, small business would also include, if you haven't got it yet, you want to go into small business, right? You could be one person who would be classified as small business.
So
no business would be excluded if they endorse the economic charter. Mm-hmm. So but small business below 300 employees, they have extra benefits because they don't need government regulation. The owner of a small business got to know his employees, their capability. He wants to make sure, there's no injuries, respect the environment, right? And they would be small businessman. He could give bonuses to his key workers. He could maybe give profit sharing, or could do maybe equity, but let that be free. 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, small business was free. They operated under the free enterprise system. The capitalistic system is based on the free enterprise system, but it needs harnessing. Over 300 employees, they got to share with the employees the profits. But imagine eliminating the poverty. Imagine a Canada where 90% of the people would be economically free, because if you're not economically free, you're not a free person, you're a slave.
Yeah.
So good luck to everybody, and let's work together. Let's band together. Let's spread the message. Let's ring the bells all over.
Let's ring the bell.
Let small business, let them
Flourish, stimulate our
them
economy,
flourish.
and get us
Don't
back on
interfere with them. Let them be free.
Fantastic.
Free Canada.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for everything you've done for Canada and continue to do for Canada. As Frank mentioned, please join the New Wave Common Sense Business Association. Let's turn this country around, and let's increase our living standards. Thank you, Frank.